Hi there, and welcome to Season 3 of the Humans and AI podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing and data center space. These people truly are at the top of their game. We've got honest and authentic conversations with our guests. We're going to chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and even the lessons they've learned from their mistakes, and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experience and knowledge. We talk about the company they're currently in and how they see the future of the space. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who have walked the same path, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We're going to be releasing new episodes on Thursday at 12, so make sure you stay tuned. Hi Jeff, great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you this morning, Nick?
Brilliant, thanks. Very good indeed. Great to have you. We've been talking about this for a little while now. So just for the benefit of the audience, do you mind just doing intro, who you are, current role, and the company that you work for?
Sure. My name is Jeff Hinkle. I am the CEO of Ionstream. That's at ionstream.ai. And we do GPU as a service. We host GPU servers, including AMD and NVIDIA. And we also provide managed CPU service in addition to that, because sometimes people need those in addition to the GPUs.
Fantastic. So look, it's obviously a business that we know. We've been working with you guys for a little while now, but it'd be great just to go back to the beginning, talk a little bit about you as the CEO and your experience. I think we were just talking about it offline now. You have a combination of a technical background, but also a commercial sales background. So it'd be good just to see how you got into this market.
Yeah, absolutely. So my very first job out of college was in a data center, believe it or not, out in San Francisco Bay Area. And got to do some really cool stuff because it was in the late 80s, early 90s, back when tech was really shifting. For example, I was put on one of the new technologies evaluation teams and got to go visit Sybase at their Emeryville headquarters, which was one of the very first relational databases. Got to go visit Oracle down at their brand new Redwood City location. Got to see their labs with Sequent and Tandem and Pyramid. This was back when multi-CPU parallel computing was really just beginning and getting going on the x86 line. So a lot of really cool stuff that occurred back then. And then eventually went back towards communications, actually, and went to work for a company called Bell South in Atlanta, Georgia, working in their advanced networks group, network solutions, and we were basically their design arm for all of their data networks. Anytime they had customers that needed wide area networks that were data or anything starting out in the internet, they were engaging our group, and our group later was formed and began with bellsouth.net, which was their first foray into being an ISP. That all got rolled up back into AT&T, and so from there, I went and worked in a couple of big systems integrators, and I started their Cisco practices for them, or really their networking practices. And we formed the first couple of Cisco Gold partners in the Southeast back then. One of them is now part of, it was actually bought by GE Capital, and then the other one was bought by Presidio, which is a big global company now. So after doing that and helping those guys make a ton of money, I decided that I think I was 34 years old, 33, somewhere in there. And I said, it's time for me to try to make some money for myself and go do this on my own, because if I fail, then I'll still have time to recover. Because they say that most businesses fail within the first 3 years. You're going to know whether it's going to crash or not. And so I went out and we started what we thought was going to be a converged communications company at the time, because that was back when voice and video and data, they were all starting to come together on the different lines. You went from dial-up back then in the early 90s, late 90s, and then you got ISDN, which was somewhat digital, or it was digital, but you got a little bit higher speed. And then, you went up from there. And back then, a T1 was a pretty fast internet connection at the time, because we didn't have as much media-rich internet back then. And so you started to get to the point where video conferencing could occur. You could take multiple, it was called a PRI, which was the digital version of a T1. You could start taking multiple ones of those and bonding them together and running actually a decent video session. And we wanted to put together a network that would do that and would integrate all that. Well, what happened was we quickly found that some of the hosting that we were being asked to do, because we had a decent network put in place, was outstripping anything else we were doing. And so we just kind of followed the flow, of where the business was growing and what the market was demanding. And we ended up becoming one of the first dedicated server/bare metal providers of Linux x86 boxes back in the day. That was 2001 timeframe, right around there, 2000, 2001. And that business just rapidly grew and took off. And we had a lot of fun with it. It feels a little bit like it is now in the GPU space, where you're just going crazy and everything you can deploy is getting chewed up. And we grew that business up. We actually were one of the top domain destinations when you measure it by IP space of domain names associated with your IP space. I think we were in top 10 or top 15 globally at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so we were growing and chewing through data center space in a building in downtown Atlanta. And every time we would grab double the amount of space, we would eat it up, and then we'd grab double more and we'd eat it up. And we finally said, this is getting crazy. We're going to become the largest tenant in this building. And we're spending, $500, $600 a square foot to improve $80 a square foot building space. And we can't take it with us if we decided to move somewhere or do something else. So let's just go buy our own building and become a data center operator. So that's what we did in 2006. And we bought like triple the size that we needed, but we grew into it. And also by having that larger space, we ended up bringing in some very nice clients, especially with our focus on critical uptime. We brought in several of the largest hospital systems in the Atlanta area. And one of the reasons for that was it was fortuitous. I would like to claim that I planned it this way, but I didn't. The building ended up being at the intersection of two different substation serving areas. And Georgia Power allowed us, after we petitioned them, to bring in power from that second substation serving area through our backyard of the data center. And then they allowed us to actually run that power active. So we had large hospital systems, say for example, their big disk drives, that their SANs that they were using, they were getting a feed from one substation for their A feed and a feed from one substation for their B feed. So this thing never went down. I mean, it was crazy. And we went back and did a analysis, and even if we had not had UPSs or generators, we just plugged them literally into the wall power kind of deal, we would have had one outage in the 8 to 9 years that we actually owned and operated that facility. Only one outage in that whole time.
That's insane. So I mean, so obviously you've just followed the demand. So way you were, you've created a really good product. You've then followed the demand. You doubled down on your server hosting business, and then obviously went in and got your own data center, because otherwise you were just spending money when you could do it for yourself.
That's right.
And then you became a colo business and a services business, essentially.
That's exactly right. Yep. We had our whole managed bare metal business, including some cloud and managed servers, and then we had our data center footprint. And we had customers in the data center that bought nothing from us but data center services. And
what was the business called? Because there was that Net Depot. Or was that something else at the time?
That was called everybody referred to it as GNAX. GNAX.net. It was Global Net Access, and that was back in the day where 3- and 4-letter web names were really easy to come by. So we had that one, and it's still a cool name. I still own that domain. That's my personal email address that I've kept.
Oh, really? Can't let go of it now.
Too much, but yes. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So you obviously built the data center 3 times the size, knowing and committed and confident that you were going to grow into it, and obviously get colo customers and hospitals. Yep. So then what happened? obviously you moved on. I think you sold it, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So we kept growing that and growing that. And, at some point, we were going to need, well, we had brought in some outside investors and we're partnering with them. And they really came in as a bit of a cash out for my dad, a little bit for me, and then really didn't add external investment to the business because we were cash flowing very well and we were able to get loans, traditional bank loans, because banks love buildings and land. It's easy for them to understand that. Computers, not so much. It's harder for them to get their head around buying an asset that just, you buy it, it hits your dock, you open the lid of it, and unbox it, and it's a used piece of gear. And so we were rolling very well with that. And we got to that point, though, where we were going to need to bring in a much larger outside investor. And at the time, we decided that's not what we wanted to do. So I think we were 75% full. And if I go back and I was thinking through all my, when I did my MBA, all my business school lessons said, you've got to leave something for the next guy to make it valuable enough, for them to want to do a transaction and to keep your multiples up. And so we felt like that was the perfect time because we had a solid business there. It was booming. Somebody could come in and take over and add it to their portfolio.
Yeah.
But yet there was also some runway left for them to grow on and really pay for that as well. So we went out and ran a process and sold that business to a company called Zayo. They were a big national fiber provider, and we were literally sitting on top of their fiber down our street. And they came in and bought it and added it to their portfolio, and I rode off into the sunset for a while, moved to Florida and retired for a good bit. And I had actually, prior to that, moved to Florida, to be honest with you, and was living down there kind of doing things remotely because the business was for the most part running itself at that point with a great team. And once we concluded that transaction, that allowed us to create a family office per se, money. And so after that, life was a little bit different. I didn't have to work at that point. Things were really good. And so we decided to make another investment in data centers. So we bought some land and started building out a facility in Spring, Texas, which is about 40 miles north of Houston. We kept our managed server business, the dedicated business, called NetDepot and Jaguar PC, and continue to run those. And we have those to this day, in fact. And
are they sort of self-running then, are they? Or do you still have to oversee it?
I've actually come back to work, shockingly. What I always tell people is that retirement is awesome, but it's not that awesome. And so...
Got bored.
It's good to be able to step back and take a little time off and take a breath and just recalibrate yourself, get yourself back healthy, because we all know as entrepreneurs, it's a grinding lifestyle. I mean, you're responsible for everything. And a lot of us entrepreneurs, many times we put our business and other things ahead of ourselves, and we just let our health go a little bit. So I took my time to get healthy, to get in shape, lose some weight, just, de-stress, and really kind of get my bearings on what's next. What am I going to do? Am I just going to play around, or am I going to, do something else? And so we funded the data center build, and I was involved in that for a little bit. And then I would say, and by the way, I also did a lot of fun stuff and got that out of the way, because I thought to myself, anything that is time sensitive, that do I want to do this in my 70s? If it's a no, I should do it now.
Yep.
Because
fair enough.
We all have a limited time, right?
Yep.
And so we don't know when that time is going to end. So I said, I'm just going to go do this stuff now. So I took some time off, as I mentioned, and I learned to fly because I wanted to learn to fly all my life. Bought an airplane, learned to fly. That was a lot of fun, total blast. Very interesting. And got my instrument rating, which was one of the hardest tests I have ever done in my life. It was crazy. just the amount and volume of material you had to memorize for this thing. Bought some race cars, started car racing. That was a blast. I still do that because that's something you can do for a while. So that's been a lot of fun.
Sounds like you're a modern day Peter Pan, to be fair. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
Right. Fly off to Neverland. Yeah. I'm going to grow up.
Well, I'm jealous. I'm terrified of flying. Do it because I have to. But the race car thing, that's definitely my kind of thing. So you're still doing that?
I am, yes. I am. It's a lot
Between
of fun.
that and building data centers.
Yeah, in fact, it was really cool. Thanks to Microsoft. I don't usually like to give plugs to external companies on these kind of things, but Microsoft actually thought my car was really cool and what we were doing with it in the Trans Am series over here that I was racing in, which a lot of really famous racers have raced in that. I eventually got good enough to go into that series, and Microsoft decided to put some cars from our series into their Forza racing game.
Oh, really?
Yes, so I'm in Forza with my car is.
My kids play that game, so that's pretty cool.
Yes. And I'm coming out in their street racing version as well, which is the Forza Horizons. So my car was popular enough that I'm going to be in that one as well. So I'm pretty pleased with it. And it's interesting. You can run into random people now, really anywhere. And when you're talking about gaming and stuff, a lot of people play that game. It's very popular worldwide, everywhere. And many of these people have raced my car in there, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's your car? That's crazy!" And so it's pretty interesting. It's a little topic of conversation to break the ice and just meeting new people and talking to people. So pretty fun. That was my one little small claim to fame.
It is amazing. I think I'll have to be telling my kids later on today, to be fair, because they originally got, God knows how many years ago, when they first bought an Xbox, it came with it, and then they've bought it every time it's come out again since. So, I'll have to look out for your car.
Yeah, it's the Dodge Challenger, in the Trans Am Dodge Challenger.
Right, I'll have to actually get to look out. So obviously you've been doing that. You've been living your best life. You're still doing that as well. You've then built a data center as well, and you've got Net Depot running. Obviously, lots of fingers and lots of pies. So coming up to date now.
Yep.
Are you owning your own data center, or are you in a colo now? How's it working?
Yeah, so we kept our facility in Atlanta, our co-location portion for Net Depot. So we're a client of DataBank. DataBank bought those facilities from Zayo. So my old facility in Atlanta is DataBank's Atlanta facility, and we've been there since early on. We're still a client there. And then we exited our data center investment in Texas, October of 23, to a private equity group out of New York. And we remain a client there. In fact, we're their largest client in that facility. And that facility is really designed to be Tier 4. It's not formally certified as Tier 4, but it is a Tier 4 designed and spec'd facility. So we've never had a power outage there. In fact, the guy that runs it currently is a certified tier designer with the Uptime Institute. So, one of the few, there's only like 2 or 3 in the United States that actually run and operate within data center companies. So it's pretty cool. And I came back to work full time in 2021.
Okay.
Yep. So we decided to move. We moved from Florida. We were living at the beach. And
sounds good.
We had a great time there. It was an amazing experience, and it was good to, like I said, reorient myself. But we just decided that I had a big investment in the data center out here. We were about to do a big expansion on it because it was getting full. And I just said, let's move and go out there and be near. I had some family here, so we moved out here and went back to work full time, and got back in and actually managed and ran the whole data center build out for the phase 2 of that facility. We've got some really cool pictures still. Me with a hard hat running around driving tractors, and that's the owner's option, right? I don't like to drive a tractor all day, but if it's sitting there, I'm going to go out and be like, hey, next couple hours, I'm on the big bulldozer. It's the Peter Pan, right? Hey,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
toys out back. I'm going to go drive them for a little bit.
To be fair, why not get stuck in? So you've been building out that building out that data center, expanding your capability and service offering. So does that bring you up to date, or has there been any sort of significant sort of landmark moments over the last sort of few years?
Yeah, we've got more. It's been a whirlwind, kind of crazy. So got that data center completed, and then I shifted and went back into the CEO role over NetDepot and Jaguar, and just started taking it in the direction that I wanted it to go, which was a little bit than where the prior management team that I had it. And everybody has their own DNA that they want to inject into their companies, and that can be different when you have a management team running it versus when you're at the helm personally as the entrepreneur. So we decided to really focus on that business, and what we saw was that AI was about to be the next internet, which was amazing because I got to go through a managed server internet revolution, of how the internet was going to change everything for everybody in the web and hosting and all the online experience. And usually that's all somebody gets in their lifetime, right? You get one big shift, and that was your deal that you're known for. And then we got the whole thing of data centers and shifting towards third-party operated data centers, and that's pretty much where everything goes now. Most companies don't own and operate their own data centers anymore, so that shift has taken. Got to dip my toe in and have some fun with that. And now with AI, especially when you saw ChatGPT roll out and everything start booming there, I mean, this thing has just absolutely exploded. And I don't see it slowing down, and we're just right at the very, very beginning of this thing. It seems like it's mature, but it's not even close. I mean, it's just a rocket ship. So we shifted and said, let's start taking our investment and building out AI infrastructure. So that's what we've been focused on, is the build out of the AI infrastructure, hosted GPU service. We hired a great team that we've known in the past from the web hosting and industry itself, and brought them in to build out a bare metal pane, that would operate at a bare metal versus a virtualization layer. And so, because one of the reasons that we saw is that a lot of people have come into the AI hosting industry from the outside. I think we had this conversation before, that didn't have that 25-year background of seeing the evolution of all these businesses and seeing what the needs are of the clients that I've been in, and and some of my cohorts that have been doing this for a long time have seen. And we knew immediately that from a virtualization standpoint, while it was hot and it was easy, we knew that the big users and the core demand was not going to want that they were going to want bare metal, because this is early adopter phase in the market. And just like early adopter phase back in the Linux hosting days, they don't want you screwing around with their server too much. They're probably just as good as your team, right? And so what they want is you to provide a great experience of uptime, an easy, manageable single portal to get into, but they want it to be at the bare metal level so that they can manipulate that server and do what they need with it and get in. And they don't want that overhead of the virtualization that will just really slow down the server, to be honest with you, and slow down their application. So from our perspective, the market segment that we were serving, that made most sense. So we built out a portal for it, and we're one of the few that actually have a bare metal portal serving the GPU market, and that's gone very well. So that business is booming, and lots of really cool stuff.
It's a crazy market, and depending on from one CEO to the next that I speak to, they all come at it from a different perspective, and invariably it's usually depending on the background that they themselves come from. So as you just said yourself, years and years working within infrastructure, and so infrastructure, Linux, data center backgrounds, and you understand the needs, and you've seen the different evolutions. We've seen founders come from money investment backgrounds, and they naturally, being entrepreneurial and inquisitive, they see where the market's going. So they might come in from a experience where they know how to go and buy land and access to power, and actually their USP is getting really cheap power, so they can obviously pass cheap costs, cheap prices on to the clients. And then you get others that are just tech evangelists and think it's all about the software layer, and it's all about that point where they can offer cool, funky services at the top, and the rest of it they don't really care about. So it's funny because obviously you're true bare metal and offering, because like I say, the customers do know what they're doing invariably. So it's about actually just giving them a seamless, uptime, reliable service. And I think that's ultimately, it's not that complicated, is it? It's actually supposed to be quite simple. That's some of the things they look for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, I'm not knocking anybody that doesn't.
No, of course not.
Background, because they bring their own value, and part of that growth in business is raising money, right? That's a difficult thing to do, and overseeing the financial side of it. And it's difficult to have every single hat on your head for every single thing, in your background. So the businesses need all the people, in all the areas to make them fully functional and fully move forward at the right pace.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's like it said, and this market is just getting started. AI, ChatGPT, when that came, that really spearheaded everything, and it's only getting busier and busier. Looking at it from where your point of view and obviously your positioning in the market now, where do you think the greatest opportunities are? And with that, there's also an element of risk as well, isn't there? Because I think some of the if you want to call them neo clouds or infrastructure players for AI, it's very capital heavy, isn't it? So it's quite a risky market. So where do you see the opportunities, and also where do you see the risks?
That's a great question, and I think if you asked 5 different really awesome dudes in the industry, you're probably going to get 5 slightly different answers.
Probably.
And maybe each one of them is 80 to 90% correct, and it's all going to come true, because we're still at that such an early stage in the market space and the businesses. I do believe that there is room for everybody right now. I believe that the market needs more, to be honest with you. It's growing quickly, and adoption of the technology is still very low in businesses in general. You hear everybody say, "Oh, we're AI enabled." Well, you and I both know that that's really not necessarily the case in most people's businesses. They throw that out there because it's a buzzword and a web term that they need to be on, but we haven't really seen true adoption. Just like when cell phones came out back in the day, you may be too young to remember this, but I remember my dad had the big Motorola brick.
Oh, I had a big phone, so definitely had a Motorola as well.
A big giant screw-on antenna and stuff, and all you could do was punch in the number and hit send, and you got your call through, and there's very limited coverage. Only a few cities had coverage, and then it went, and you got more things going on. And then, I don't know, what was that, about 10, 12 years later, that maybe even longer, but the first iPhone came out, and everybody said, "Oh yeah, that's just a fad. People aren't going to do all that stuff on a single device." And then look where the evolution of the iPhone and the Android and just what we're doing on those. I mean, many people almost run their business from their cell phones now, to be honest with you. And so I view that AI is going to be no different than any of those market spaces that have evolved. And we're going to be doing more and more with AI over time, and it's going to consume more and more compute. And it's going to come in stages and phases as adoption occurs, because you don't go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in one step. You have to get there through steps, of adoption steps or cycles. And so we're in that very early adopter phase right now. And I just see in 10 years, AI is going to be totally different. It will probably be on almost everything and in everything we do, but it's not there yet. And so that's why I say we still need a lot of people coming into the business to grow it and to help with the adoption and to do new things. And anyway, that's my viewpoint on it. from that, and so that's one of the risks, is that we don't get enough people coming into it to get the adoption going to where it needs to be. One plug I will give, which I love, is BitTensor and the BitTensor network and Tau. Just an amazing twist on the crypto environment. A cryptocurrency built fully on actually providing useful services in an e-commerce format, to where you have users consuming and providers providing through the blockchain. So super excited, super bullish on that. And I think that will spin off and continue to grow the whole distributed and decentralized AI in the marketplace. And I saw a statistic the other day. I don't know if this is true because I don't have the data behind it, but if it is true, and it probably is, it's pretty cool, is that the distributed AI, distributed inferencing that's going on has now exceeded as a whole all of the big guys as a whole. So the Chat GPTs, the Meta, et cetera, when you combine all of them, distributed AI is now serving more tokens than all of them combined. That's pretty dramatic and pretty telling, because it's just getting going, and it's really almost like a crowd-funded type deal, where you've got this globally distributed community that's going on, and that's really resilient, right? Because just like the blockchain, you have a hit to one little piece of it or segment of it, or in a country or a provider or whatever. You're not taking the whole thing offline, and same thing with this. So I'm pretty stoked about that, and I think that's a huge opportunity, along with inferencing, which I don't know if you went to BTC last. One of the things that Jensen Huang said over at NVIDIA, he said inferencing is where it's at now. That's the big growth area, and I heavily agree with that, and we've seen that playing out in our business in the AI side.
I think I was reading that inferencing today is about 105 billion, as a market, and they reckon by 2030 it'll be 250. So it's probably one of the biggest growth areas. So again, it's exactly something that we've been looking at. But to your point about, being distributed, bigger, all bigger than all the major players, with your Metas and what have you. Yeah,
that's what you're using AI for. It's the inferencing. You're asking a question, it's doing something for you. Write me a program, review this legal doc, whatever it is, that's inferencing for, people watching the podcast that don't know.
And I think that shows there's room for everybody, isn't there? That's to your point, that there's enough out there and there's enough room for everyone to get in there and be successful. That the market is only getting bigger, I think, and I think that's what's exciting. But just on that, a bit more background on that. I mean, just for those people that don't know, what is the overall sort of description that you would provide for inferencing, if you were to describe anybody in a bar what inferencing actually is?
Yeah, so if you have an app for one of the major providers, like a Chat GPT, a lot of people have, or Llama or Meta or whatever, the little app you have on your phone that you can plug in, and you can ask it a question. Who do you think is going to win the UK soccer or football tournament? And it'll go through then and think about it and come back and tell you, I think, and I'm not going to say anybody's name because I know I'll just make whoever everybody else mad. I know you guys are really passionate about football, but
that's it.
Club XYZ is going to win because, they got this new player that came from so-and-so, and their coach, they've been winning more each year, and they're right at the point, and this and that, and it'll reason it out and tell you, so I think this one's going to win. But, this other club, ABC, it has a shot at it, so they may be the stalking horse, the second one in there. And if XYZ doesn't make it, that's what inferencing is actually providing you an answer to your question. Or, like I said, I'm going to upload this legal document. I would like for you to review it and tell me, are there any gotchas for liabilities in it that I could potentially get hit by? And so then, it'll go through and it'll come back and it'll give you commentary on that from that perspective. And so that's why everybody says inferencing is the big growth engine, because that's the usefulness, or part of the usefulness of AI, is what you do with it, what benefit you're getting out of it. Because comparing and contrasting that to training, which is where the market really started out, right? Is, everybody thought, well, there's going to be all this money in training, and everybody went out and were buying these, large clusters of GPUs and, 64 servers, $20 million, $100 million, $200 million and more. And all of a sudden, one of the big providers came out and said, well, we've decided that we're going to outsource our model or open source our model. And so they made the model available to everybody for free usage. And then, of course, everybody followed after that. So now training has concentrated into the hands of a few, and it's huge. And they're mostly doing it on their own. So, like you read about Elon Musk and X, they built their massive training facility with thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe 100,000s of GPUs. And Meta has theirs as well. And ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're building out theirs. And so training is not necessarily going to be the thing that drives general growth in the market, because that is already concentrating and consolidating into the hands of a few providers that have really big checkbooks and really big backers to do that. And you also have a lot more single party risk in training as well, because somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need $50 million worth of GPUs for 6 months, and I'll sign up with you. That's a little scary, right?
Just a little bit.
$50 million investment for a 6-month commitment. Well, you've got to be at huge scale already to do something like that. But on the inferencing side, you can be adding GPU servers, you can add 4 or 5, 10, 20, whatever you can afford, or have the risk or stomach for risk for. So that's where the big growth is, because then everybody takes these models, they load them on these servers, and they either put in an API or a direct web interface for the customers to come to and put those servers to work using those models. And most people aren't going out and creating tons and tons of new models. They're just using the big outsourced models, and that will continue, because now you see China has dropped DeepSeek and France has dropped Mistral, it's not just a USA thing anymore. You're getting big open sourced models now that are available. So that's done. And now, which is pretty cool, there's some companies that now, I would say they've created like the marketplace of models for AI inferencing, where now instead of going to ChatGPT and having access to their model, to answer your question, now you can go online and have access to really all the big models out there, because they each do something slightly different and slightly better than the other one, right? So now it's almost like, hey, I can go here and I have a question about English football, and this model over here, it seems to have a good reputation at doing sports really well. So I'm gonna pull a drop down box, and I'm gonna select that model to ask my question to, and you can ask it, or this model over here seems to do Python coding really well, and I've got a new program I want to write, and so I'll tell it what I want, and it's going to churn out the code for me, and it'll do it better than the one that predicts football outcomes. So now you're getting that focus, and I think that's the direction that everything is going to go, and those are being served through distributed compute power. Do you remember the SETI project?
No, I don't.
No,
What's that?
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
No, I don't know much about it. You tell
That was
me.
one of the first cool things. I used to run SETI, the program on my computer. It was how you could, it was a project where they had the big radio telescopes located out in very deserted areas, so they had little interference, and they were taking in all of this data that was coming to Earth from other solar systems, other, I don't know, maybe possibly galaxies or universes, et cetera, or in the universe. And so they would take all this data, and you could sign up your personal home computer as long as it had an internet connection, download their program, and your program could go out and grab a piece of data from their database and run the analysis on it, and then report back up to them. And so that became this huge distributed network for free compute cycle for the SETI project. And so I know this is kind of a crazy stretch, but it's kind of like that, where all of a sudden now you're able to provide compute as part of this giant project,
Yep.
but now people are able to get paid on it. And I just see lots of projects like that popping up all over the place. And we provide compute power for the companies that are doing that. They call it mining, but it's really not truly mining. You're providing distributed compute, and it's pretty cool. I'm really excited about where things are going, and I think that's going to be a big growth area.
It certainly is. I mean, we speak to a lot of people that are working on that, and it's great, and it's definitely where part of the market is going for sure. Just thinking, obviously, your background, as to put your point, serial entrepreneur, built some businesses, sold businesses, retired, come out of retirement, doing again. We have a lot of people that obviously listen to this podcast, been on the podcast, that are new to entrepreneurship, whether they be the CEO or the COO. Often that they're a sales guy that's moved into leadership and to build something, or they could be a software engineer. What is it that your musts to actually build a successful team and business organization, really, to go on and attack a market? Because I think it's such a complicated thing, and you can do so many things right and you can do so many things wrong, and everyone makes mistakes and they learn from them. But with your learning so far, what are the sort of key things that you do to ensure or increase your chances of building a successful business?
Yeah, great question. And we could spend another podcast just on that question. Right?
We might have to.
So let me try to boil it down to a couple of key little zingers that I like to tell people that I think are really important. Being an entrepreneur, and especially a serial entrepreneur, I think is like surfing. So I like to tell people you have to be like a surfer. And what's a surfer doing? A surfer is always out there looking for that perfect wave, the right wave to get on, right? And you pass over a lot of little waves that are coming through, but you could jump on those, and some people do, and it's an okay ride, but you're out there, you're waiting, you're patiently watching for that right wave. And then you jump on it and you ride it, and it's this great ride, and you're going towards the shore. But then you've got to know when to get off of it also, right? Otherwise, the thing just drives you in and slams you face first into the sand on the shore. So you don't want to do that either if you're an entrepreneur. So I think you've got to be that surfer. You got to find the right wave, and you got to know when to get off of it, and you got to know when to look for that next wave coming through. And that's just part of the business process. And it could be within the same business that you're operating, and being able to pivot and follow where the market's going, and knowing that versus, I don't know, remember the one cell phone company? I'm not going to drop their name, but they just kind of went away. But everybody used to use them. Remember, click, click, click,
Yep,
click, click.
absolutely. Another one.
I don't even think you can buy one of those things anymore. Maybe you can. I'm not sure, but they are basically gone. They're not part of the greater market space in any large format. And I think they didn't find that wave. Maybe I don't know what happened, but anyway. There's lots of stories like that where you're growing, it's great, but you refuse to change, you refuse to grab that next wave.
And it just crashes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you don't want to do that. And so the other thing I like to describe it as, one of my catchphrases, is to engage in creative destruction of your own business, and always looking for what can you blow up and do better? What's there that you can destroy and recreate and make it better? Because if you don't, somebody else will. There's somebody else out there ready to destroy your business, constantly working to destroy it. So it's better if you're destroying it and recreating it better all along the way in little increments, so that you're staying ahead of them, and they're kind of outside the castle gate, and every time they bring back something, a new weapon, you already used that new weapon that you came up with and blew up your own gate and rebuilt your gate better. And, they took their shot and it bounced off, and, they're going to go away and come back with something, better weapon. So your guys better come up with a better weapon and figure out, what that is, so that you're always having your business changing and creatively destructed along the way to be better and better and better. And you could wake up one day and your business is nothing like it started out 10 years ago. And that's great. That means you've probably been successful, and you have, taken that business to the next level.
You've got to be able to pivot and be flexible, haven't you? You've got to be able to let that business evolve, like you say. If it just remains the same thing, it's just going to stagnate.
Correct. Absolutely. Or, or you exit it. You
Yep.
get it to a certain point and you realize that it's an awesome business and it's outgrowing your ability. And, many entrepreneurs have to look and see that, are you a small to mid-size operator, or are you a big corporate guy to take that business to that next corporate level? And many times that's not the same person. And, I know a lot of guys that have made a ton of money and they're small operators, and they've done it serially because they realized and embraced that, hey, I'm not a guy to have a 5,000 person company and take this to a $5 billion company, but I can make 3 of these 30 to $100 million companies in the same time frame. It's going to take one of them to get to 100 billion. I can get these there, and then somebody's going to want to buy that company because I've created something really awesome. And then they can take that flywheel I've created and take it to the next level. And that's what they do really well, is scaling a flywheel, And so you have to understand what type of an entrepreneur you are as well, or what type of a business person you are. And, maybe you can go and do that and you hate it. And is life worth that? Do you want to spend 10 years hating what you're doing? So
I think I never thought about that way, really. I mean, I always thought that people look to grow a business and to make it perfect, ready to sell. But actually, you don't want that, because then there's no real growth in it. So it's about getting it to, 70, 80% of what it could be, and letting somebody else take it on that can give it that extra bit. Otherwise, there's nothing in it for them.
Yep. And I know the opposite of that, which is, I know guys that are huge corporate guys, awesome guys, amazing backgrounds and talents. They would fail miserably. And they know this and they'll admit to it as well. They would fail miserably if you said, here's $1 million, go start up the next cool thing and grow it to 20 million and call me. And 6 months into it, they're like, this sucks, man. I can't do this. I'm not a secretary. I'm not an engineer. I'm not the janitor. I'm not the, all the things that you have to be as an entrepreneur, that you have to be willing to do everything and be everything at some point. And they're just like, this is not fun. I hate this. Where the smaller entrepreneur says, this is awesome. I love the variety of it. This is a great thing, and I can get in there and build. And I never want to sit there with 500 people reporting up to me, in a big office somewhere. That's just boring as hell, and zero interest. Don't want to do it.
So knowing where you are and where your best strengths are to play is obviously that true self-reflection. Otherwise, you're going to hinder the growth of a company, I suppose, or never get it where it's supposed to be.
Yep, that's right.
Crikey. Well, look, there's a few things there. Like you say, we might have to do another one just to talk through what it could be. Before we finish up, and obviously just speaking a little bit more about Ionstream, just obviously we gave a little bit of a summary and obviously what you've been doing now. I mean, what are some of the key things that you guys have been focusing on for people that are listening? Why should they come and necessarily talk to you guys about what their needs may be relating to GP services or what have you, or even CPU?
Yeah. Another good question. Thanks for that. I would say that our length of term in business and our experience of the team is a big thing. So with our background and what we've been doing, the GPUs that we've brought online, the 25 years of deploying and managing those systems, how we deploy them, the performance we get out of them. It's a lot of little things that people don't think about in the background, but these are things that make everybody more, I would say, an easy life in their day-to-day operating their infrastructure on our servers. And I think that's one of the number one things we get from customers that are on our website is the uptime is amazing, the network is amazing. And I came out of a network background, so that's one of my pet peeves is making sure we have the best network out there. So just that operational experience, we've done this for a very long time, and we bring that. We're not brand new jumping into this marketplace to do it just because somebody wrote us a big check, and we're learning as we go along. That's a really key thing. We have decent access to the types of servers that are in demand right now. So we make sure that we have the providers out there that people are looking for, and that we set them up for them correctly. We help them and support them. We're not running people's servers for them per se, but when people have issues, our team jumps in there, and if they want us to jump on the keyboard, we'll do that and help them out, or we'll do a remote session with them and just help them fix things that we might see from the different use cases that we've seen as well, and make sure they get tuned up properly.
So essentially, it's all that tenure and expertise. It's the resilience of the network and the tech, but then it's the service, isn't it? And I think service goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Our portal, little things like that. You do business. I do business with my bank because of their application and the experience. But a bank is a bank, right? They take your money in, they run your checks, and they do wires. But I stick with mine because my portal experience, I'm used to it. I'm happy with it. I know it. It's easy for me to work in, and we find customers comment on that a lot. We've made it compatible with mobile devices, and just making sure everything's good there. The data centers that we pick to deploy in, we've seen some people deploy in some, kind of ex-Bitcoin mining stuff that's not necessarily tier 4 type stuff. And these servers are extremely expensive. You're putting a lot of money into renting these and being on them, and they deserve to be in a top tier type data center that's going to have uptime, because the numbers get really big really fast. I think that's the keys there for why I think people like to do business with us and continue. And we're not a huge company, so people don't get lost in the shuffle. It's do you want to be a small fish in a big pond, or do you want to be a big fish in a small pond? So we give them that VIP experience.
Yep, you care about your customers, so long and short of it, they should be calling you or calling Mike and coming into the business. But look, it's been great today. It really has. It's been good to get to talk about the business and obviously your background. And I definitely need to go and look at your car on Forzo as well, and so we'll take it from there. But look, it's been great. Let's do another one. See how things are going on in a year. It's a market that's changing, as we talk about all the time. So be good to see the progress.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Nick. Great to see you as always. Appreciate you having me on.
No worries. Until next time, take care. Bye now.
Have an awesome week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I truly hope you got to take away something valuable. This episode was brought to you by Asobi. I'm the founder and managing director, and it's our goal to connect the very best talent in the most exciting scale-ups in AI, ML, and the DC space. If you're looking for more practical advice or just some inspiration from those that have been there and done it, stay with us. We're going to be releasing new episodes every week, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow Asobi on LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing.